So when we talk Big 12 championship, things are still complex. That's the first thing that I want to echo and push through, that there are still so many teams in contention here. And this is a caveat that needs to be said. It didn't need to be said a week ago, but it needs to be said now. The Big 12 could still change the rules. That's what we just learned, right? They went and they said, hey, we're going to clarify some of these rules for you and make it a little clearer. You didn't clarify, you changed, you added on, because one day Kansas State was in the Big 12 championship, and then the next day, the right thing happened and Oklahoma State was in the Big 12 championship. Yes, it was the right thing. Should you have changed it mid-season? Not for me to decide, but to say it was a clarification and not a complete change was wrong. So let's first and foremost understand that everything I'm about to tell you could change tomorrow when Brett Yormark goes, the only teams that can go to a Big 12 championship are ones that start with B and end in Ayler, and those that start with B and end in YU. Obviously, that's facetious, but it's how frustrated I would be if I'm a Kansas State fan watching what the Big 12 did when they changed the rules. There are somehow 7 teams that are in this converse that I'm going to bring into the conversation. Texas Tech, Iowa State, West Virginia, Kansas State, Oklahoma State, and Texas. 7 fan bases can listen to this segment right now and say, I somehow have a say in this. I somehow have something to play for this week. And it is wild that we're having a conversation about that many teams this late in the year. The reason why there are so few teams with 2 losses or 3 losses in Big 12 play playing one another, and those that are going to give you an opportunity to create the ultimate chaos. Let me paint you this picture. Follow along with me. TCU beats Oklahoma, dropping the Sooners to 6-3 in Big 12 play. Texas Tech beats Texas. Tech would then be 6-3 in Big 12 play. Texas 7-2. Iowa State beats Kansas State. Both of those teams 6-3 in Big 12 play. Oklahoma State loses to BYU. Oklahoma State 6-3 in Big 12 play. West Virginia beats Baylor. At that point, West Virginia 6-3 in Big 12 play. In this scenario, listen clearly, in this almost impossible but somehow possible scenario, Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, Kansas State, West Virginia, Iowa State, and Texas Tech. 6 teams are all dead even with a 6-3 record in conference play and a chance to go to Arlington. In that maximum chaos scenario that would fit the Big 12 that has been so parity bound this year, in that scenario, Texas at 7-2, 10-2 overall because of the loss to Texas Tech, who is now in that conglomerate of tied teams. They get to go to Arlington. They march to Arlington. We are talking Iowa State and Texas Tech, who are 6-5 right now, have an opportunity to go. In this scenario, too, if you're Iowa State, your loss to Texas, how much is it going to hurt you? Your loss to Oklahoma is going to hurt you, and then Oklahoma beat Texas, but then Oklahoma lost to Oklahoma State. But then Oklahoma State also beat Kansas State. But Kansas State, they got to win against Iowa State. As I start to put it together, here is where the Big 12's rules get even more vague. So this is why people have been asking questions to the Big 12 of, hey, in the event that there's a 3-team tie, what do you do? In the event now of a 6-team tie, do you say, okay, wait a second, Kansas State has beaten Oklahoma. Kansas State has beaten Oklahoma, or make it Oklahoma State has beaten Oklahoma. Oklahoma State has beaten Kansas State. Does that mean that they get to go? Because Oklahoma State, their losses, what's going to help them is one of their losses is to UCF, who's not in this conversation, so they can't get a head-to-head. The UCF cannot leverage that head-to-head. Does that make sense? However, you did lose to Iowa State, but that's the same Iowa State team that lost to Texas, but Texas now is already in, so they're out of the conversation. But at the same time, they lost to Oklahoma, who's in the conversation. Mind-blowing. At this point, we would have to unpack everything to figure out common opponents, who beat who, what's the head-to-head. I've got to figure out there's a metric you can get to where it's point totals and strength of schedule and conference strength of schedule and how many wins you've got overall. It is baffling that we could get to that point, but that is just me giving you the doomsday emergency scenario. What do I think is going to happen here? I think Kansas State beats Iowa State at home, moving themselves to 7-2 in Big 12 play. I do think Oklahoma is going to win against TCU at home, moving them to 7-2 in Big 12 play. I think Texas beats Texas Tech. They're going to lock themselves into the Big 12 championship. At this point, if you've heard me correctly, this is Kansas State at 7-2, Oklahoma 7-2, Texas 8-1. UT, you're in. Another team that's going to be 7-2, tied right there with Kansas State and Oklahoma. Kansas State and Oklahoma. Oklahoma State, they're going to beat BYU at home. They're in Stillwater, Thursday game, move to 7-2. If you're keeping score, that is now 3 teams that I have finishing this week tied at 7-2. West Virginia will beat Baylor, but at 5, it will beat Baylor, but at 6-3, it doesn't matter. Kansas will beat Cincinnati, 5-4, they're out of the equation. There is now no Iowa State. They just lost to Kansas State. They're 5-4 out of the equation. There is no Texas Tech. They're 5-4, just lost to Texas out of the equation. This would create the exact same scenario that we currently have in Big 12 play that Brett Yormark just clarified. When Oklahoma State, Oklahoma, and Kansas State are tied somewhere in this, Oklahoma State, because they have the head-to-head win against both of those teams, will move forward. That's it. That's the way this is going to play out. I'm calling it today, Sunday, November 19th, that Texas will play Oklahoma State in the Big 12 championship game. Ollie Gordon, you get your shot. Quinn Ewers, you get your shot. Texas wants to win a Big 12 championship and go out the right way. Oklahoma State and Mike Gundy can ruin that and wipe away the bad taste of 2021 when they could have won it at the goal line and didn't get in. For Oklahoma, for Kansas State, a couple of weeks ago, by rule, you would have been in the conference title game. The way that there was what's your record against common opponents? But we've changed that now. We didn't change it. We clarified it. But given the matchups this week, unless Oklahoma State does something disastrous, give me Texas, Oklahoma State, Longhorns, Cowboys, Big 12 championship. Who's getting fired? This Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is where I go to make money. I specifically love going and betting on Big 12 teams. I bet on Iowa State this weekend. So I didn't win money on Iowa State, but I also bet on Kansas State money line. Had a lot on their money line in parlays, and that's one of the best parts of FanDuel is you can have parlays, player props, over-unders, fun spreads, and a wide range of spreads there with Big 12 teams and those abroad across college football, the NBA, the NFL, the NHL, and new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. So you go in, you say, look, I got Oklahoma State moneyline this week over BYU. You place that $5 bet. If it hits, you get $150 in bonus bets. Score early this NFL season as well with FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook, FanDuel.com/locked on to kick off the NFL season. FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of the National Football League.